The Grand Majestic Hotel stood tall and proud against the city skyline, its gleaming facade promising luxury and comfort. Inside, however, a different story was unfolding. Dr. Martin Anderson, a distinguished physician with a reputation for both his medical expertise and his impeccable style, stepped through the revolving doors, his tailored suit and polished shoes a stark contrast to the opulent yet somewhat dated interior. He carried himself with an air of quiet confidence, his gaze steady and observant as he took in the lobby's grandeur. The plush carpets, the crystal chandeliers, the meticulously arranged floral displays, all spoke of a certain level of elegance, yet a subtle undercurrent of something less appealing seemed to linger in the air. He approached the reception desk, a polished mahogany counter that seemed to exude an air of self-importance. Behind it sat Mr. Fitzwilliam, the hotel manager. Fitzwilliam was a man of a certain age, his face etched with the lines of privilege and entitlement. His attire, a crisp but slightly rumpled suit, suggested a man who considered himself above the minutiae of daily tasks. He regarded Dr. Anderson with an appraising gaze, his expression betraying a hint of something akin to disdain. "Good evening," Dr. Anderson said, his voice smooth and polite, a stark contrast to the atmosphere that seemed to emanate from the manager. "I have a reservation under the name of Anderson." Fitzwilliam tapped a manicured fingernail against the desk, his eyes lingering on Dr. Anderson's attire, a subtle, yet unmistakable assessment. He didn't immediately respond, instead choosing to meticulously examine the computer screen before him, as if searching for something that was clearly not there. The silence stretched, becoming increasingly uncomfortable. Dr. Anderson remained patient, his expression unchanging. He knew the subtle cues of prejudice, having encountered them before in his life, and he was prepared to navigate this encounter with grace and dignity. Finally, Fitzwilliam looked up, his gaze still lingering on Dr. Anderson, a faint smirk playing on his lips. "Anderson," he repeated, the name sounding almost like a question, a challenge. "Let me see. Ah, yes. Anderson. I seem to have a problem here." Dr. Anderson raised an eyebrow, a subtle indication of his growing unease. "A problem?" he inquired, his voice maintaining its calm composure. "Yes," Fitzwilliam replied, his tone condescending. "It seems there's been a slight error. We appear to be fully booked. Completely booked, in fact. Not a single room available." He gestured vaguely towards the lobby, where several empty seating areas and unoccupied chairs were clearly visible. Dr. Anderson suppressed a sigh. He had confirmed his reservation earlier that day, and the hotel's website had clearly indicated availability. This was clearly a fabrication, a lie designed to conceal something else entirely. He examined Fitzwilliam's face, searching for a clue, a flicker of guilt or hesitation. He found none. Instead, he saw a smug satisfaction, a sense of power derived from the act of denying service. "I find that rather hard to believe," Dr. Anderson said, his voice now carrying a hint of steel. "Your website indicated ample availability just hours ago. I have confirmation of my reservation here." He produced his confirmation email, holding it up for Fitzwilliam to see. Fitzwilliam glanced at the email, his expression unchanging. "Well, things change," he said dismissively. "The website isn't always entirely accurate. Perhaps there was a technical glitch. Or perhaps you misunderstood." He paused, his eyes scanning Dr. Anderson's attire again, lingering on his shoes, his watch, his perfectly knotted tie. "Perhaps this establishment isn't quite suitable for you." The implication was clear, a blatant display of racial prejudice. Dr. Anderson felt a surge of anger, but he controlled it, his expression remaining calm and controlled. He understood the game being played, and he was determined not to let Fitzwilliam win. "I believe you're mistaken, Mr. Fitzwilliam," Dr. Anderson replied, his voice measured and even. "I have a confirmed reservation, and I intend to stay here tonight. I suggest you reconsider your position before this matter escalates." He held Fitzwilliam's gaze, his eyes unwavering. The subtle power play was on. The game had begun. Mr. Fitzwilliam's smirk faltered slightly at Dr. Anderson's unwavering gaze and assertive tone. The carefully constructed facade of nonchalant authority began to crack, revealing a flicker of unease beneath the surface. He hadn't expected such a direct challenge, Such a resolute refusal to accept his blatant lie. He had anticipated the usual meek acceptance, the quiet retreat to a less prestigious establishment, the unspoken acknowledgement of his inherent superiority. Dr. Anderson, however, was proving to be an unexpected obstacle. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his fingers drumming in nervous rhythm against the polished mahogany desk. The silence stretched, punctuated only by the faint hum of the hotel's air conditioning and the distant murmur of conversations in the lobby. The other hotel staff, seemingly accustomed to Fitzwilliam's eccentricities, avoided eye contact, their attention focused on various tasks that suddenly seemed far more urgent. "Look," Fitzwilliam began, his voice losing some of its earlier confidence. "I'm telling you, we're fully booked. It's not personal. It's just a matter of logistics." He tried to regain control, to reassert his authority, but the words lacked their usual conviction. The lie was wearing thin, even to his own ears. Dr. Anderson remained silent, his expression unreadable. He allowed Fitzwilliam to flounder, to expose the weakness beneath his carefully crafted persona. He knew that silence, in this instance, was a powerful weapon. It forced Fitzwilliam to fill the void, to continue justifying his actions, to dig himself deeper into the hole he had created. "Perhaps," Fitzwilliam continued, his voice now laced with a hint of desperation, "perhaps you could try one of the smaller hotels down the street. They might have something available. They're more suitable for your needs." The implication was once again clear, a thinly veiled attempt to categorize Dr. Anderson based on his race and assumed socioeconomic status. Dr. Anderson finally spoke, his voice calm but firm. "I believe you are attempting to discriminate against me, Mr. Fitzwilliam. Your claims are demonstrably false, and your behavior is unacceptable. I have a confirmed reservation, and I expect to be accommodated." He emphasized each word, ensuring that his meaning was crystal clear. Fitzwilliam's face flushed crimson. He was cornered, his lies exposed, his prejudice laid bare. He tried to regain control, to deflect the accusation, but the words wouldn't come. He stammered, searching for a plausible explanation, a way out of the predicament he had created. He glanced around the lobby, hoping for some intervention, some support, but the other staff members remained studiously focused on their tasks, their faces impassive. "It's not like that," Fitzwilliam finally managed to stammer out, his voice barely a whisper. "It's just a misunderstanding, a simple mistake. There's been a clerical error." He wrung his hands, his composure completely shattered. The mask of authority had completely fallen away, revealing the insecure and prejudiced man beneath. Dr. Anderson remained calm, his expression showing neither triumph nor anger. He knew that Fitzwilliam's desperation was a sign of his defeat. He had exposed the prejudice, and now he would allow the consequences to unfold. He produced his phone, discreetly activating the recording function. He would ensure that this encounter would not be forgotten. The game was far from over, but he had already won the first round. He would let Fitzwilliam continue to dig his own grave. The weight of his actions was about to become significantly heavier. The silence hung heavy in the air, broken only by the faint ticking of a clock somewhere in the recesses of the grand lobby. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his face a mask of frustrated desperation, stared at Dr. Anderson, his earlier arrogance replaced by a palpable sense of unease. The carefully constructed facade of authority had crumbled, revealing the insecure and prejudiced man beneath. He desperately searched for a way out, a way to salvage the situation, but his mind was a whirlwind of panicked thoughts and half-formed excuses. Dr. Anderson, meanwhile, remained calm and composed, his expression unreadable. He held his phone discreetly, the recording function quietly capturing every word, every stammer, every nervous gesture. He allowed Fitzwilliam to flounder, to dig himself deeper into the hole he had created. The longer Fitzwilliam spoke, the more incriminating his words became. "It's just a mix-up," Fitzwilliam stammered, his voice barely above a whisper. "A simple error in the reservation system. It happens sometimes. We're very busy, you see. Very busy." He wrung his hands, his eyes darting nervously around the lobby, searching for a lifeline, a way out of this increasingly uncomfortable situation. Dr. Anderson remained silent, his gaze unwavering. He let Fitzwilliam's words hang in the air, allowing their inherent weakness to become even more apparent. The more Fitzwilliam tried to justify his actions, the more obvious his prejudice became. The carefully constructed lies were falling apart, revealing the underlying bigotry that fueled his actions. "I understand that mistakes happen," Dr. Anderson finally said, his voice calm and measured. "But this is not a simple mistake. This is a deliberate refusal of service based on my race. I have irrefutable proof of my reservation, and your continued insistence that no rooms are available is simply not credible." Fitzwilliam shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his eyes darting around the lobby, searching for an escape, a way to extricate himself from this increasingly difficult situation. He glanced at the other hotel staff, hoping for some support, some intervention, but they remained studiously focused on their tasks, their faces impassive, their silence a tacit acknowledgement of his wrongdoing. "It's not about your race," Fitzwilliam insisted, his voice strained. "It's about the system. The computer. There's a problem with the system. It's malfunctioning." He desperately clung to this flimsy excuse, hoping that it might somehow hold up under scrutiny, but even he knew it was a desperate, unconvincing lie. Dr. Anderson let out a soft chuckle, a sound that was both amused and condescending. "The computer system is malfunctioning in such a way that it only affects black guests?" he asked, his voice laced with a hint of sarcasm. "That's a remarkably convenient malfunction, wouldn't you agree?" Fitzwilliam opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. He was trapped, his lies exposed, his prejudice laid bare. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, assuming that he would be a passive victim, easily dismissed and brushed aside. Instead, he had encountered a man of quiet strength and unwavering resolve, a man who would not be intimidated or silenced. The weight of his actions, his blatant racism, was beginning to crush him. The game was over. He had lost. The consequences were about to begin. The silence that followed hung heavy and thick, a palpable tension filling the opulent lobby of the Grand Majestic Hotel. Mr. Fitzwilliam sat slumped in his chair, his carefully constructed facade of authority shattered, replaced by a look of utter defeat. His earlier arrogance and condescension were gone, replaced by a mixture of shame, fear, and a dawning realization of the gravity of his actions. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, misjudged his resolve, and now he was paying the price. Dr. Anderson, however, remained calm and composed. He had anticipated this moment, this point of capitulation. He had known that Fitzwilliam's prejudice would eventually crack under the weight of his own lies and the unwavering resolve of his victim. Now, he would ensure that the consequences were swift and decisive. He subtly adjusted his phone, ensuring that the recording was still active, capturing the silent confession etched on Fitzwilliam's defeated face. He knew that this recording would be crucial in the events to come, a testament to the blatant racism that had been displayed and a powerful tool in the fight for justice. I apologize," Fitzwilliam finally stammered, his voice barely a whisper. The words were hesitant, unconvincing, laced with a desperation that betrayed his true feelings. It was a forced apology, born not of genuine remorse, but of fear and the realization that his actions had far-reaching consequences. Dr. Anderson remained silent, his expression unreadable. He allowed the apology to hang in the air, letting its insincerity speak volumes. He knew that a simple apology wasn't enough. Fitzwilliam needed to understand the depth of his wrongdoing, the impact of his prejudice, and the consequences of his actions. A simple apology wouldn't suffice. "An apology is a good start, Mr. Fitzwilliam," Dr. Anderson finally said, his voice calm and measured, "but it's far from sufficient. Your actions have been discriminatory, unacceptable, and unlawful. I have documented everything, and I intend to pursue this matter further." Fitzwilliam's eyes widened in alarm. He had hoped that a simple apology would suffice, that Dr. Anderson would simply accept it and move on. He hadn't anticipated such a resolute response, such a determined pursuit of justice. He had underestimated his opponent, and now he was facing the consequences of his arrogance and prejudice. I didn't mean for it to be like this," Fitzwilliam stammered, his voice trembling. He was grasping at straws, desperately searching for a way to mitigate the damage he had caused, but the words rang hollow, devoid of genuine remorse. Dr. Anderson remained unmoved. He had seen this type of reaction before, the desperate attempts to minimize wrongdoing, the hollow apologies offered without genuine contrition. He knew that Fitzwilliam's remorse was superficial, born not of genuine regret, but of fear of the consequences. "Your intentions are irrelevant, Mr. Fitzwilliam," Dr. Anderson said, his voice firm and unwavering. "What matters are your actions, and your actions have been discriminatory and unacceptable. I have a recording of this entire conversation, and I intend to use it to ensure that you are held accountable for your behavior." Fitzwilliam slumped further in his chair, his shoulders slumped, his head bowed. The weight of his actions, the realization of the consequences, was crushing him. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, and now he was paying the price. His career, his reputation, his very livelihood was at stake. The game was over, and he had lost. The true reckoning was yet to come. The air in the lobby crackled with unspoken tension. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his face pale and drawn, sat slumped in his chair, the weight of his actions pressing down on him with crushing force. His carefully constructed facade of authority had completely crumbled, revealing the insecure and prejudiced man beneath. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, misjudged his resolve, and now he was facing the consequences of his arrogance and bigotry. Dr. Anderson, however, remained calm and composed, his expression betraying no hint of satisfaction or triumph. He had anticipated this moment, this point of capitulation. He knew that Fitzwilliam's prejudice would eventually crack under the weight of his own lies and the unwavering resolve of his victim. Now, he would ensure that the consequences were swift and decisive. He subtly adjusted his phone, ensuring that the recording was still active, capturing the silent confession etched on Fitzwilliam's defeated face. He knew that this recording would be crucial in the events to come, a testament to the blatant racism that had been displayed and a powerful tool in the fight for justice. This wasn't just about him. This was about setting a precedent, about ensuring that others wouldn't face the same kind of discrimination. A low hum of conversation began to ripple through the lobby, the hushed whispers of other hotel staff members, their eyes darting between Dr. Anderson and the defeated Fitzwilliam. They had witnessed the entire exchange, the blatant racism, the humiliating defeat of their manager. The atmosphere was thick with a mixture of shock, apprehension, and a simmering sense of anticipation. The carefully cultivated image of the Grand Majestic Hotel, an image of impeccable service and unwavering professionalism, was being tarnished by the actions of its manager. Dr. Anderson, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, decided to take control of the narrative. He stood up straight, his posture radiating quiet confidence and authority. He addressed the other staff members, his voice clear and strong, cutting through the hushed whispers. "I am Dr. Martin Anderson," he announced, his voice carrying across the lobby, "and I am a city health inspector. I am here conducting a routine inspection of this establishment." A collective gasp rippled through the lobby. The other staff members, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief, exchanged nervous glances. They had witnessed Fitzwilliam's blatant racism, but they hadn't anticipated this unexpected twist. The consequences of Fitzwilliam's actions were about to become far more significant than they had ever imagined. Fitzwilliam's eyes widened in alarm. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, assuming that he was just another disgruntled guest. He hadn't anticipated that his victim was also his judge, jury, and executioner. The weight of his actions, the realization of the consequences, was crushing him. He had played a dangerous game, and he had lost. The game was over. The reckoning had begun. His carefully constructed world was about to come crashing down. The irony of the situation hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that promised a dramatic escalation. A stunned silence descended upon the lobby of the Grand Majestic Hotel. The revelation that Dr. Anderson was not just a disgruntled guest, but a city health inspector hung in the air, thick and heavy, a palpable shift in the dynamics of the situation. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his face ashen, stared at Dr. Anderson, his eyes wide with a mixture of disbelief, fear, and dawning horror. He had played a dangerous game, and now the consequences were about to unfold with a swiftness and severity he had never anticipated. The other hotel staff members, their faces a mixture of shock and apprehension, exchanged nervous glances. They had witnessed Fitzwilliam's blatant racism, but they hadn't anticipated this unexpected twist. The consequences of Fitzwilliam's actions were about to become far more significant than they had ever imagined. The carefully cultivated image of the Grand Majestic Hotel, an image of impeccable service and unwavering professionalism, was about to be shattered. Dr. Anderson, his expression calm and composed, produced his official identification, displaying it clearly for all to see. The weight of his authority settled upon the room, silencing the hushed whispers and nervous glances. He had anticipated this moment, this point of revelation, and he was prepared to act decisively. "As you can see," Dr. Anderson said, his voice clear and strong, "I am authorized to conduct a thorough inspection of this establishment, and I intend to do so." He began his inspection methodically, his movements precise and deliberate. He moved through the lobby, his keen eyes missing nothing. He examined the cleanliness of the carpets, the condition of the furniture, the overall hygiene of the space. He noted minor infractions: a smudge on a polished surface, a slightly dusty corner, a chipped piece of molding, all evidence of a lack of attention to detail, a neglect of basic standards of cleanliness. He then proceeded to the kitchen, his inspection becoming increasingly thorough. He examined the food preparation areas, the storage facilities, the equipment. He found evidence of unsanitary practices, improper food storage, and a general lack of adherence to basic health codes. He documented every violation meticulously, taking photographs and detailed notes. His calm demeanor belied the growing severity of his findings. As he moved from area to area, the other hotel staff members watched him with a mixture of fear and apprehension. They had grown accustomed to Fitzwilliam's lax management style, his disregard for rules and regulations. Now, they were witnessing the consequences of his negligence, the potential repercussions for their jobs, their livelihoods. Fitzwilliam, meanwhile, watched in silent horror as Dr. Anderson's inspection uncovered a growing list of violations. He had focused solely on his prejudice, overlooking the basic standards of hygiene and safety that were essential for the operation of a hotel. His arrogance and negligence had combined to create a perfect storm of consequences, a situation he had no power to control. The weight of his actions was crushing him. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, and now he was paying the price. The game was over. He had lost. The reckoning was complete. The air in the Grand Majestic Hotel grew heavy with the weight of Dr. Anderson's meticulous inspection. Each violation he uncovered added another layer of tension, another increment of fear to the atmosphere. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his face ashen and his body rigid, watched helplessly as his carefully constructed world crumbled around him. His arrogance and negligence, his blatant racism and disregard for basic standards, had combined to create a perfect storm of consequences. Dr. Anderson moved through the hotel with the methodical precision of a seasoned professional, his keen eyes missing nothing. He examined the guest rooms, checking for cleanliness, the functionality of safety equipment, and adherence to fire codes. He found evidence of inadequate maintenance, worn-out fixtures, and a general lack of attention to detail. Each violation was meticulously documented, photographed, and noted in his official report. The hotel staff, a mixture of seasoned veterans and nervous newcomers, watched him with a mixture of fear and apprehension. They had grown accustomed to Fitzwilliam's lax management style, his disregard for rules and regulations. Now, they were witnessing the consequences of his negligence, the potential repercussions for their jobs, their livelihoods. The whispers and nervous glances had escalated into a palpable sense of dread. Fitzwilliam, meanwhile, remained rooted to the spot, his body rigid, his face a mask of despair. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, assuming that his prejudice would be the only consequence of his actions. He hadn't anticipated the thoroughness of the inspection, the severity of the violations, the cascading effect of his negligence. His carefully constructed world, built on arrogance and entitlement, was collapsing around him. As Dr. Anderson continued his inspection, The mounting evidence of violations painted a grim picture of neglect and disregard for basic standards of safety and hygiene. The kitchen, already flagged for numerous infractions, revealed even more serious issues: improper food handling, outdated equipment, and a general lack of cleanliness that posed a significant health risk. The storage areas were overflowing with outdated supplies, creating a fire hazard. The guest room showed signs of inadequate maintenance, with worn-out carpets, malfunctioning appliances, and a general lack of attention to detail. Dr. Anderson's report grew longer and more damning with each passing moment. The weight of the violations, the potential consequences, pressed down on everyone in the hotel, creating an atmosphere of dread and apprehension. The once proud Grand Majestic Hotel, a symbol of luxury and elegance, was now revealed to be a breeding ground for health hazards and safety violations. The irony of the situation, the unexpected justice served, hung heavy in the air. Fitzwilliam's arrogance and prejudice had not only cost him his dignity, but also threatened the very existence of the hotel he managed. The game was over. He had lost. The reckoning was complete. The consequences were about to be delivered. The finality of Dr. Anderson's inspection hung heavy in the air, a palpable tension that filled every corner of the Grand Majestic Hotel. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his face ashen and his body trembling, stood silently, watching as Dr. Anderson meticulously documented the final violations. The weight of his actions, the consequences of his arrogance and negligence, pressed down on him with crushing force. His carefully constructed world, built on prejudice and a disregard for basic standards, was collapsing around him. Dr. Anderson, his expression calm and composed, completed his inspection, his movements precise and deliberate. He had anticipated this moment, this point of culmination, and he was prepared to act decisively. He had seen this type of neglect before, but rarely had it been so blatant, so intertwined with such overt prejudice. This was not just a matter of health code violations. It was a matter of justice. He carefully reviewed his notes, ensuring that every violation was accurately documented, every detail meticulously recorded. The sheer volume of infractions was staggering, a testament to Fitzwilliam's negligence and disregard for basic standards of safety and hygiene. The report was damning, a comprehensive indictment of the hotel's management and a clear indication of the need for immediate action. He then addressed the assembled staff, his voice clear and strong, cutting through the hushed whispers and nervous glances. "I have completed my inspection," he announced, his words carrying the weight of authority. "And I have documented numerous and serious violations of the city's health and safety codes." He paused, allowing his words to sink in, the gravity of the situation settling upon the assembled staff members. They had witnessed Fitzwilliam's blatant racism, but they hadn't anticipated the severity of the consequences. The carefully cultivated image of the Grand Majestic Hotel, an image of impeccable service and unwavering professionalism, was about to be shattered. "Based on my findings," Dr. Anderson continued, "I am ordering the immediate closure of this establishment. This hotel poses a significant health risk to its guests and staff. Furthermore, I will be recommending the suspension of Mr. Fitzwilliam pending a full investigation into his management practices." A collective gasp rippled through the assembled staff. The weight of Dr. Anderson's words, the finality of his decision, hung heavy in the air. They had witnessed Fitzwilliam's arrogance and negligence, but they hadn't anticipated the severity of the consequences. Their jobs, their livelihoods, were now at stake. Fitzwilliam, his face drained of color, stared at Dr. Anderson, his eyes wide with disbelief and horror. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, misjudged his resolve, and now he was paying the price. His carefully constructed world, built on prejudice and entitlement, was collapsing around him. The game was over. He had lost. The reckoning was complete. The consequences were swift, decisive, and utterly devastating. The irony of the situation, the unexpected justice served, hung heavy in the air. The immediate aftermath of Dr. Anderson's announcement was a maelstrom of confusion, fear, and disbelief. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his face ashen and his body trembling, stood rooted to the spot, unable to comprehend the swift and decisive turn of events. His carefully constructed world, built on arrogance, prejudice, and a blatant disregard for basic standards, had come crashing down around him. The consequences of his actions were far more severe than he could have ever imagined. The hotel staff, a mixture of long-term employees and nervous newcomers, exchanged anxious glances, their faces reflecting a mixture of shock, apprehension, and a dawning realization of the gravity of the situation. They had witnessed Fitzwilliam's blatant racism and his lax management style, but they hadn't anticipated the immediate and drastic consequences that followed. Their jobs, their livelihoods were now hanging in the balance. The once proud Grand Majestic Hotel, a symbol of luxury and elegance, was now a scene of chaos and uncertainty. Dr. Anderson, his expression calm and composed, watched the unfolding drama with a detached air of authority. He had anticipated this reaction, this moment of chaos and disbelief. He knew that the revelation of his dual identity, the swift and decisive closure of the hotel, would send shockwaves through the establishment. He had prepared for this, knowing that the consequences of Fitzwilliam's actions needed to be swift and decisive. This was about more than just a health code violation. It was about justice. He proceeded to systematically address the immediate concerns, ensuring that the closure was conducted in an orderly manner. He instructed the staff on the necessary procedures, ensuring that guests' safety and well-being were prioritized. He coordinated with the city authorities, ensuring a smooth transition and a swift response to the situation. His actions were decisive, efficient, and utterly professional. Fitzwilliam, meanwhile, remained paralyzed by shock and disbelief. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, misjudged his resolve, and now he was facing the full weight of his actions. His arrogance and prejudice had not only cost him his dignity, but also threatened his career and his livelihood. He had played a dangerous game, and he had lost. The game was over. The reckoning was complete. The consequences were swift, decisive, and utterly devastating. The other staff members, their initial shock slowly giving way to a mixture of anger and resentment, began to voice their own grievances. They had long endured Fitzwilliam's abusive management style, his disregard for their well-being, and his blatant racism. Now, with the hotel closed and Fitzwilliam's authority effectively revoked, they felt empowered to speak out, to share their experiences, and to demand accountability. The seeds of change had been sown, and the ground was fertile for a new beginning. The era of Fitzwilliam's reign of terror was over. A new chapter was about to begin. The temporary closure of the Grand Majestic Hotel sent shockwaves through the city. News of the health code violations and Mr. Fitzwilliam's suspension spread rapidly, fueled by whispers, rumors, and the ever-present social media. The once proud establishment, a symbol of luxury and elegance, was now the subject of intense scrutiny and public condemnation. The irony of the situation, the unexpected justice served, was not lost on anyone. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his reputation in tatters, found himself isolated and ostracized. His carefully constructed world, built on arrogance, prejudice, and a disregard for basic standards, had come crashing down around him. He had underestimated Dr. Anderson, misjudged his resolve, and now he was facing the full weight of his actions. The consequences were far more severe than he could have ever imagined. His career, his livelihood, his very identity were all at stake. He tried to contact his superiors, to explain his side of the story, to mitigate the damage, but his attempts were met with a cold and distant silence. The evidence against him was overwhelming, the violations undeniable. His attempts to shift blame, to minimize his responsibility, were futile. The truth, laid bare by Dr. Anderson's meticulous inspection and unwavering testimony, was inescapable. Meanwhile, Dr. Anderson, his role in the events now publicly known, became a symbol of unexpected justice. His calm demeanor, his unwavering resolve, and his meticulous attention to detail had exposed the rot at the heart of the Grand Majestic Hotel and brought down a racist and negligent manager. He became a figure of admiration and respect, a testament to the power of quiet strength and unwavering integrity. The hotel staff, initially fearful and apprehensive, found their voices. They came forward with their own accounts of Fitzwilliam's abusive management style, his disregard for their well-being, and his blatant racism. Their testimonies, corroborated by Dr. Anderson's report and the mounting evidence of violations, painted a disturbing picture of a toxic work environment. The long-suppressed grievances, finally unleashed, contributed to a growing wave of public outrage. The City Council, responding to the public outcry and the overwhelming evidence of violations, launched a full-scale investigation into the Grand Majestic Hotel and its management. The investigation was thorough and comprehensive, leaving no stone unturned. The findings confirmed Dr. Anderson's report, revealing a pattern of negligence, disregard for safety standards, and a culture of racism that had been allowed to fester for far too long. The consequences were swift and decisive. Fitzwilliam's career was effectively over, his reputation irrevocably damaged. The Grand Majestic Hotel faced significant fines and a lengthy period of remediation before it could reopen. The seeds of change had been sown, and the ground was fertile for a new beginning. The era of Fitzwilliam's reign of terror was over. The full weight of the investigation into the Grand Majestic Hotel and Mr. Fitzwilliam's actions fell heavily on the city. The details, once whispered in hushed tones, were now splashed across newspapers and broadcast on television. The story of Dr. Anderson's unexpected intervention, the exposure of Fitzwilliam's racism and negligence, and the subsequent closure of the hotel became a national sensation. The once proud establishment, a symbol of luxury and elegance, was now a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked prejudice and negligence. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his reputation in ruins, faced a barrage of public condemnation. His attempts to defend himself, to minimize his responsibility, were met with widespread skepticism and outrage. The evidence against him was overwhelming, the violations undeniable. His carefully constructed world, built on arrogance and entitlement, had crumbled, leaving him isolated and ostracized. His career was effectively over, his livelihood threatened, his reputation irrevocably damaged. The consequences of his actions were far more severe than he could have ever imagined. Dr. Anderson, meanwhile, became a symbol of unexpected justice. His calm demeanor, his unwavering resolve, and his meticulous attention to detail had exposed the rot at the heart of the Grand Majestic Hotel and brought down a racist and negligent manager. He became a figure of admiration and respect, a testament to the power of quiet strength and unwavering integrity. His actions inspired others to speak out against injustice, to challenge authority, and to demand accountability. The hotel staff, emboldened by Dr. Anderson's actions and the public outcry, organized and formed a union, demanding better working conditions, fair treatment, and an end to the culture of racism and negligence that had long plagued the establishment. Their collective voice, amplified by the media attention and public support, forced the hotel owners to address their concerns and implement significant changes. The long-suppressed grievances, finally unleashed, led to meaningful reforms, creating a more equitable and respectful work environment. The City Council, responding to the public outcry and the overwhelming evidence of violations, implemented stricter regulations for hotels and other businesses, ensuring greater accountability and a stronger focus on safety and hygiene. The Grand Majestic Hotel, after a lengthy period of remediation and extensive renovations, eventually reopened, but it was a transformed establishment, operating under a new management team and a commitment to ethical and responsible practices. The incident served as a stark reminder of the importance of accountability, the power of unexpected justice, and the enduring need to challenge prejudice and discrimination wherever it may exist. The seeds of change had been sown, and a new era had begun. Months after the scandal at the Grand Majestic Hotel, the city had moved on, but the ripple effects of the incident continued to be felt. Mr. Fitzwilliam, his career in ruins and his reputation irrevocably damaged, faded into obscurity. He had attempted to find new employment, but his past actions had preceded him, effectively barring him from the hospitality industry and beyond. The weight of his actions, the consequences of his arrogance and prejudice, continued to haunt him, a constant reminder of the price he had paid for his discriminatory behavior. He had learned a harsh lesson, but whether he had truly changed remained to be seen. His fall from grace served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked prejudice and negligence. Dr. Anderson, on the other hand, became a celebrated figure in the city. His calm demeanor, his unwavering resolve, and his meticulous attention to detail had not only exposed the rot at the heart of the Grand Majestic Hotel, but also inspired a wave of social change. He became a symbol of unexpected justice, a testament to the power of quiet strength and unwavering integrity. His actions were lauded by community leaders, civil rights activists, and the media alike. He received numerous awards and accolades, his story becoming a source of inspiration for others to speak out against injustice, to challenge authority, and to demand accountability. The Grand Majestic Hotel, after a lengthy period of remediation and extensive renovations, reopened under new management. The hotel owners, having learned a harsh lesson, implemented significant changes, prioritizing ethical and responsible practices. They established a robust training program for their staff, focusing on diversity, inclusion, and sensitivity training. They also implemented stricter safety and hygiene protocols, ensuring that the violations that had led to the hotel's closure would never be repeated. The reopening was met with a mix of anticipation and skepticism, but the new management team worked diligently to rebuild the hotel's reputation, focusing on providing exceptional service and fostering a positive and respectful work environment. The hotel staff, now unionized and empowered, played a crucial role in the hotel's transformation. They actively participated in the development of new policies and procedures, ensuring that their voices were heard and their concerns addressed. The long-suppressed grievances, finally unleashed, had led to meaningful reforms, creating a more equitable and respectful work environment. The incident had served as a catalyst for positive change, not only within the hotel, but also within the wider community. The City Council, having learned from the Grand Majestic Hotel scandal, implemented stricter regulations for hotels and other businesses, ensuring greater accountability and a stronger focus on safety and hygiene. The incident served as a wake-up call, prompting a renewed commitment to upholding ethical standards and protecting the rights of all citizens. The seeds of change had been sown, and the fruits of that change were now beginning to be harvested. The era of unchecked prejudice and negligence was over. A new era of accountability and responsibility had begun.